Hi, good evening. My name is Minister Johnny Banks Sr. I'm the Executive Director of Knock at Midnight. Knock at Midnight is located at 400 West 76th Street and Suite 206. Hey, listen, it's good to be back. I would ask that anyone who is viewing that you would pray for my friend and my co-host, Mr. Philip Bradley, and the loss of his daughter. He won't be here tonight. He is still grieving the loss of his oldest child, the loss of his daughter, and your prayers and your would be really good as a man struggles with something that is so hard, and his daughter didn't die a victim of gun violence or anything like that. But her life is gone, and we need to pray for Phil. Pray for his strength. Pray for his health. Pray for his the spirit to be renewed, and his mind can be relieved of just going through such a time as this. You know, and it's good to have people in your life, people around, even some of you all in the viewing audience who would just lift him up to let him know that it's going to be all right. You know, the legalization of marijuana in the state of Illinois is fastly approaching, and as it approaches, I think every now and then when something new comes on the horizon, many of us, myself included, we start looking for what resources it's going to produce, how those resources are going to be expended, how would that help the fabric, the residents, the communities of this state and of this city of ours. And we kind of look at it from the lens of how we're going to benefit from it. And as we should. As citizenry of this state, when laws are passed and governance is moving forward in our interests, then we need to know what's going to really go on in terms of how our health, interests, rights, and needs are protected, how the resources are allocated, and where will they be positioned, how to help people. And, you know, and like I said, me like other people, I've been thinking about it too, but the more I think about it, the more I start to worry about the generation that's going to come, the generation that's going to live, be born into, become owners of, become property owners and business owners, and will be the ones who call Illinois home. How are they going to be impacted in the near future with a drug that has been illegal for years now being legal? What did that really mean? How does that look? And so my whole career has been dealing with something called prevention education, dealing with things from a different perspective, of a different paradigm, because prevention is different. Prevention education is education that's designed to stop something before it starts. And so preventionists or prevention people, of which I'm one of, we try to look at paradigm shifts. We try to look at changes and how things are done and ask ourselves, if a problem comes out of this or can come out of this, how do we stop it before it starts? How do we educate children at the earliest of ages about the legalities of marijuana, about the smoking of a drug that actually, or the use of a drug that actually is a mind and mood altering chemical, the use of a drug that you will probably need some assistance with or some help with or even some treatment with, because marijuana is a gateway drug. And I think that as we go down this road and we really take the gain out of it for a minute and look at what we could lose, we really got to ask ourselves this question: what could be the loss and how can we prevent the loss? Because we're talking about the nature and use of a chemical, marijuana, which is the active ingredient in it is tetrahydrocannabinol 9, which is THC, which based on the way that it can be manufactured, and it's going to be manufactured, the way it can be grown, the way it will be produced, they can increase the volume of the drug that causes a person to become inebriated, that causes a person to have a mood and mind altering experience. They can increase that concentration to make that drug almost lethal to a young mind. Almost lethal to any mind that imbibes it on a regular basis, that smokes it on a regular basis. And to give you a good example, with all of the media attention and with all of the health warnings now about vaping, and we talking about a form of smoking. Well, marijuana is not a form of smoking. It is smoking. It is a drug. And we got to take a look at that and ask ourselves, at what juncture are they going to, or are we going to allow this drug to be used and not have the resources and the things in place to combat the issues that it's going to bring forth for not just the people that smoke, but for the people that don't smoke, for not just a community, but for an entire city, an entire state, and probably even impact this nation as the country goes all in for the legalization of marijuana. And if people have been saying that this drug has been detrimental to people's health for years, how is it all of a sudden now detrimental to people's health can be legalized? I've heard for years, and people have telling me for years, you cannot run an economy and you cannot run a country based on sin. And when people start legislating sin into law, then it becomes a taxation issue. And so you cannot educate people. You cannot develop what's needed. You cannot bring infrastructures in off the taxing of sin. This one of the issues of this country, and its genesis of it was taxation without representation. Well, if everybody's under the influence of something, who's going to be represented? And so it's time for us to take a look at it. And I know to some who may be viewing this, you may be saying, where is he going with this? Well, there was a little bitty drug that was sold, and they used to put it on television, and it was in other cities, it was in other towns, and they was calling this drug crack. And they was talking about how this drug was a mind and mood altering chemical, and people were doing strange things. They had erratic behaviors, and they stayed up for hours, and it went on and on and on and on. And then all of a sudden that drug invaded Chicago. And treatment went up, and emergency room visits went up, and illnesses came, and deaths, and people started to bring harm to themselves and other people for the sale and control of this little bitty drug that was sold that they call crack. Now, if we are not careful, we will find out. Now we got a legalized movement of people, and everybody's trying to get a dispensary here, and people trying to get a dispensary there, and everybody is moving and positioning themselves for the influx of resources that's going to come for the legalization of the drug, and not even really think about, even though illegal drug sales are incorrect as well, what now happens in communities, especially in some African American communities, when the gross national product is the sale of illegal substances. What now happens when these things become legal? Will it increase crime? Will it increase robbery? Will it increase the poverty rate? Will it increase destitution, dereliction? Will it increase death? These are the things we got to talk about. These are the things that we have to come and take a look at, not rationalizing anybody's right to do wrong, not rationalizing the good or bad, but looking at the whole picture. when we go down this road, we have to be prepared. And one of the things that will help prepare us is prevention education. And by definition, prevention is a proactive process that empowers individuals and systems to meet the norms and to meet the changes of a body of people, to meet the changes of some things that's happening with people that are being impacted by certain behaviors. Prevention seeks to slow or stop that from impacting, especially when we start talking about our youth. We can go back to Say No to Drugs, DARE, Drug Abuse Resistant Education. All of these Say No to Drugs, Students Against Drunk Driving. All of these were prevention education campaigns or prevention education programs that really impacted the thoughts and the minds of our most vulnerable people in our population, which is our youth, which gave them what they needed in many respects to say, I'm not going to do that. So prevention gives people the messaging. Prevention gives them the lens by which they can see that I don't have to deal with marijuana because it's legal. But when things become legal, people say, well, it's okay. It's acceptable. It's socially acceptable. Well, there are many people who are struggling with the social acceptability of drug use, whether that's alcohol, whether it's going to soon be marijuana, whether it's other types of drugs, because social acceptability is an improper when it comes to people struggling with what they say is legal and they doing it because that is so. And so when you're talking about prevention deals with some few modalities, and first of all, it deals with something called information. Getting information out to people that really understand that even though that legalization is coming, that does not necessarily mean that you have to participate. So we got to get out information. We got to go into the schools and take prevention programs to educate the minds of the third graders and the fourth graders that can understand that even though it may be available and even though there may be a dispensary right in your neighborhood, just like a liquor store, I would hate to see what in 20 years what we're going to be able to deal with just in terms of how the landscape looks with this new business venture that's we sure is going to invade a lot of black and brown communities all over the city. It doesn't really matter because color is not going to come into play here. Is it going to be like a Starbucks kind of thing where you can just go sit down and what is it going to morph into? Prevention gives people the tools by which they can help shape what this is going to look like and making sure that, like for instance, there is the safe school zone laws, prevention. So are we going to have it with the same thing where you can't have a dispensary within 1,000 feet of a church, a school, a park? If that's the case, those dispensaries will be very, very few in certain communities because, and let me give you a good example, 90% or 96% of Inglewood is under the Safe School Zone law. That means basically if the law was enforced, nobody could sell a drug in Inglewood because 96% of it falls under the Safe School Zone law because there's a church, there's a park, there's a school, and whatever else falls under that law in that community in such a way that you can't even sell drugs in most of these communities legally. And now we're going into legalization, so we have to deal with prevention. And prevention carries with it a process. And part of that is to educate people on the laws that already exist, what new laws need to come out, and how do we do that? How do we bring out the public service announcements that doesn't necessarily negate the legalization of marijuana, but what it does, it brings forth another way of dealing with it to let people know that because it's legal, and this is the real message that's got to come out. Even though legalization gives you the right, that does not make it right. Not when it comes to something that can impact your brain, that can impact your mind, that can impact your home, impact your family and your community. It does. Alcoholism is at the top of the list of abused drugs, and it has broke up many homes. It has caused many deaths. It has caused many accidents, and the list goes on and on and on. But it is legal. But nevertheless, people are still going to jail for driving under the influence and things of that nature. We need to see how legalization of marijuana fits into the laws of the day, and will we have it legislated properly so that we can prevent some of the things that we know are going to happen. Then that's next thing is community mobilization. Mobilizing your whole community around, do you want this type of a business in your community? I think every community and the stakeholders in the community and the stakeholders are the residents should be able to say and should be asked, is it okay for us to put a dispensary in your community? And if they put it in the community, how many of the families from the community are going to benefit from it, not become customers of it? This is valid. These are the things that friends, these are the things community, these are the things anybody who may be watching, these are the questions that we're going to have to ask. Because when it comes, and when we don't ask no questions, then we can't put up a fight when it comes to the stuff that goes on in and around these businesses, something that which most of us have never seen unless you've been to Vegas or Colorado or some of the other countries on the West Coast or the East Coast or what have you that already have marijuana legal. And we got to take a look at it and see what we have coming, because it's going to impact us. So we got information, we got education, we got community mobilization, and then we got something called social policy. You know, that's when the governance comes in, and people setting policies around smoke-free zones and stuff like that. How do you vote your community smoke-free? Because you can absolutely vote a community dry. You can put it on a referendum, and you can put it on a ballot that this particular boundary or area in a particular community, no alcohol sales of any kind can go on in these boundaries, and the people in that precinct can vote that precinct dry. The people in the ward can vote that ward dry. The people in the city can vote it dry, the county as well. It's just referendums put on a ballot. And we have to get to the point, you all, where we understand prevention, stopping problems before they start, because we have a I'm gonna say a dichotomy. We got the looks of something great and the legalization, but on the flip side, we got something that it can't produce what we think it's going to produce and not have the accompanying problems with it. We have learned enough about addiction. We have learned enough about alcoholism. We have learned enough about the varying drugs and the varying degrees of personal and social harm that these drugs do to people, they do to families, and they do to communities. We see this already. We see the increase in drug use and suicide, drug use and mental health problems, drug use and emergency room visits, and the list goes on and on. They got now where the police officers, and I'm probably going to pronounce the name of this wrong because I can't think of the name of it right now, but police officers and paramedics and different people have the tools now where if somebody OD, they can quickly bring it out of it. They're not saying we're not going to stop the drug use, but what we will do is have the apparatus to prevent you from killing yourself if you OD. And now our officers and different people are prepared and equipped with the tools to intervene and stop an OD. That costs more money. This is what I'm talking about. So instead of us dealing with the eradication of the drug, we bring in a preventive tool that prevent people from dying but not using. And when the person that OD gets themselves together, they go and use again. So we now have a bird's eye view of something that's about to happen. And marijuana, like I said, people may say, well, it's not that bad. I said, you can't get into the house unless you open the gate. Marijuana is the gate that circles the house. So once it gets in, it does damage or leads you to need a different type of drug, or a drug that has a more deepening effect, so you can feel the way you was feeling off the smoking the weed. It is amazing, you all, that one of the processes we don't really give enough credence to, because people really don't hear enough about it, is prevention. Because in the world of drugs and chemicals, there's three levels. There's prevention, intervention, and treatment. And many people, and I'm not going to say everybody, but many people really understand treatment and the treatment centers and the treatment modality. But before you get to treatment, before a child needs treatment, they should get prevention education. It's just like social emotional learning, which is on the laws and on the books, that you got to get it. And some states have said prayer needs to be back in school, that you need to have it. And that's different things that people are saying that children need. Anywhere where legalization has become law, children need a prevention education model in their schools, where they learn what prevention is, why prevention is, and how does it work. A Knock at Midnight is the premier prevention education organization on the South Side, where we work with children on character development. We work with children on life skills. We do intensive mentoring. We do professional development workshops around alcohol and around drugs, around understanding the whole nuances of that. All of that is a prevention model. It is prevention education. This is what we do. We are a prevention organization, and I encourage you to reach out to us. My name is Minister Johnny Banks. You can reach me at 773-488-2960. We'll come to your school. We'll come to your church. We'll talk to your youth. We'll talk to your adults, families, just about the whole understanding prevention and how that model really, really works. Our show goes so fast. By the time I get to talking and get a complete thought, it's time to wrap it up. Listen, I thank you for watching. I thank you for joining me tonight. Remember, prevention education. It is a process that empowers people to deal with the change in the norms and the changes in the things that's happening in their lives around alcohol and drugs, and how do you meet these challenges and defeat these challenges so you can have a happy and a healthy life. Again, my name is Minister Johnny Banks. Listen, between now and the next time I see you, remember that in the darkest hour, truth and knowledge is the way. Good evening, and God bless you.